Hello and welcome. I'm Brian Dunphy. This is John Graham, and welcome to our program. We have as our guest today the North Carolina Realtors, and to our immediate left is Mark Connor. He is the North Carolina 2022 Realtors President, and then on our far left is Cantia Smith. She is the Realtors Housing Foundation Director. Thank you so much for both for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
If either one of you could tell me about the North Carolina Realtors Association and what it's about, what it does.
Well, the NC Realtors Housing Foundation was established in 2004 with the ideal that all North Carolinians deserve affordable housing. And so our foundation is the charitable arm of the NC Realtors, and we work very closely with them, but we have our own board that does everything that we're doing, and we have a lot of programs, and we've helped a lot of people throughout the North Carolina get into affordable housing.
Okay, cool. Tell me about some of the events that are happening. I know we're looking at 100 homes, right? Can we go into a little bit of detail on that? I know there's a lot going on that y'all do.
Yes, and so just to let you know a little bit of feedback, I started this position last July. It has been an amazing transition, and so one of the things our board has gotten behind was affordable housing, as Mr. Mark said. Initially, we did down payment assistance, disaster relief whenever there was a disaster here in North Carolina. But our board, who is made up of realtors and housing-related people who work in different avenues of that, they wanted to do more. And so it was like, what could we do to really make a difference? The 100 Homes in 100 Counties campaign kind of initiated from that wanting to do more. And so we met with Habitat, kind of discussed some things we were wanting to do. We really wanted to focus in on our rural communities. We wanted to focus in on residents with a 50 to 80% AMI. And so that is kind of how 100 Homes was birthed. Our first project was a full house build, which is in Taylorsville through the Alexander County Habitat for Humanity. And it was a great experience. And it was like after our board saw the impact of that, because one thing I can say about this board is they are definitely very involved with their communities. We have associations across the state, 45, and so our realtors are very involved with our community. And when the board got, the feeling of what that was like, our president, Ms. Michelle Roberts, was like, I want to see if we can do this throughout our state. And so we birthed 100 Homes in 100 Counties, and that is a pledge from the NC Realtors Housing Foundation that we will do an affordable housing project in all 100 counties. This launched this year, Brian. 2023 launched the 100 Homes in 100 Counties. And so since launching it, we've invested $250,000 to do critical home repairs and two full house builds in Alexander County. So it's just a really great thing to be a part of. And so now what we are doing, we are actually campaigning and fundraising to help with the 100 Homes in 100 Counties, because as you know, these projects are very expensive. Resources are definitely needed. And so you had asked us about our event, and so we have our 2023 Golf and Give coming up in September. That is going to be September 18th. We are hosting it at the beautiful Longleaf Golf Family Resort in Pinehurst. We are so happy to be in Pinehurst. Anyone who knows North Carolina. Pinehurst is the king of kings when it comes to golf. And so we are just excited to be doing that and just being able to raise money to do more work in our other counties. So far we have touched 5 counties, and our goal is to touch all 95. And so that is kind of how the 100 Homes in 100 Counties was birthed.
Excellent, excellent. Well, now, Mark, tell us, what do you do in the grand scheme of this?
Well, again, as Brian mentioned, I'm the past president, the 2022 president. So I transitioned into our affordable housing
excellent. Okay,
chair
I got it now.
And so the 100 Homes in 100 Counties falls right underneath my umbrella of, I have a committee of about 8 to 10 people on my committee who goes out and tries to find different projects within these 100 counties that we can work on, whether it be, like Cantia said, new build, or whether it be housing repairs, something related to affordable housing that we're working on. And again, we're looking at 50 to 80% of the area median income of those folks that we're trying to touch. We have also we did we gave $25,000 to New Hanover County for them to build some affordable units down inside of the city of Wilmington, which is a project that's going on right now as well. So as Kantia stated, we partner with Habitat, but we also have other affordable housing other affordable housing organizations within those other counties that we're working with as well. So we're not only working with Habitat, but other affordable housing organizations within each county.
Right.
Tell me about, I know you mentioned affordable. Why is it so important to have affordable housing, to have this initiative, this push to have affordable housing for folks in the area?
I think it's important because people really need homes. Before this position, I worked with the homeless, and so it was a great transition. And so I have a full understanding of the lack of housing and the need for housing in this state and across America. Affordable housing. And I want to make sure people understand what we say when we say affordable housing, because a lot of times that word has gotten a negative connotation, and I don't like that. When people hear affordable housing, they think of Section 8, low income housing, which are great housing options. But when we say affordable housing, we mean housing that people and workforce can afford. At this time, there are people who work jobs such as teachers, firemen, ambulance drivers, who cannot afford to buy a home. And it's because of the surge of pricing, the surge of people, wanting homes. I mean, as you all see this past year, if you were a realtor, you made some great money because the housing boom was big. And so affordable housing is needed because housing is very expensive. And housing takes up usually a person's 50%. Sometimes I think it's higher, but they usually say housing takes up 50% of a person's income. And so when you think of the word affordable housing, you're really saying housing that I can afford that's going to be safe and sufficient for my family.
And let me just add to that, we have a certification, which is the workforce housing specialist within under our educational component. The NC Realtors Housing Foundation has basically four legs. We have our educational, we have our affordable housing, we have our fundraising, and then we also have, what's the last one?
Executive,
yes, executive committee. And so that's where each one of these legs has a component that we work on. And so under our education, we have a workforce housing specialist where these agents go out and get additional education to work with the workforce housing clients. And we also give out $1,000 grant for anyone who's working with a workforce housing client. So as Kantia was alluding to with the workforce housing, we noticed that probably some 8-10 years ago, a lot of firefighters, police officers were having to live so far outside of the city, and they worked inside the city, and it was like not affordable housing because these urban areas were raising the prices so quickly. So that's where we come in to try to bridge the gap. And we have lending partners who will do what they call gap funding in a lot of these projects that we're dealing with, and that's where we're trying to raise funds to help with offset the cost. So let's say a unit might still cost, let's say $400,000, but we may be able to get some gap funding that will offset it to bring it down to maybe $300 or $250 to where that family can afford that house.
How do you go about doing that gap setting that you just talked about?
We're working with a lot of banks, and that's where we're raising funds from banks and also other organizations who donate money to nonprofits to do this work. So any housing related organization, or they have a understanding of the housing related. And then we have some other fundraisers like our golf tournament that we're doing in Pinehurst, and some other things that we do that will help us raise funds to help with that gap funding.
Yeah, I'm thinking of there's that gap in there, because I remember in 2008 when people were getting approved for homes that they couldn't afford, and now there's so many rules in place for you to even get a home. I think I was working 3 jobs, and I barely made the cut on my last house in about 2015, 2016. So that margin in there is just so fine, where you got working folks that are working, regular jobs that can't afford it, and not to mention, the interest, the taxes, you take all that into account.
And
Right.
full disclosure, Brian is a full-time fireman.
Okay.
And he is in his spare time, he helps and produces shows like this.
Awesome.
So,
And thank you for your service.
Yes,
Oh, yeah, well,
absolutely.
thank you. Yeah.
so I'm pretty sure he runs into people that fall in that and need that gap funding in there, because, that's another thing. We hear it and we think immediately, well, that's just San Francisco or some of these other, but we don't realize that it's happening right here,
Absolutely.
right with us.
And that's one of the best things about like partnering with agencies with that, like Habitat, because that's what the foundation wants to do. We want to look for community partners that we can help finance. We have an association of over 57,000 realtors in North Carolina. We have 45 associations that cover all 100 counties. And so really pulling those resources from our already members is one of the things we strive to do. But we look for partners who have already been established. So for instance, like we said, Habitat, they're very well known nationally, and just being able to get behind them. We're working with 2 habitats and looking at other ones. So in Alexander County Habitat and then Rutherford County Habitat. But also other agencies, the Hinton Rural Life Center. We have partnered with them to do 4 critical home repairs for disabled veterans, and they are in Cherokee and Clay. And so really the foundation really looks at how we can get funding to give it to people that's already doing the work. Because that is what is important, funding and the work. If you don't have the funding, you can't do the work. And so our main goal is to always fundraise, write grants, do whatever we have to do, but to also look at people in the community, other nonprofits that is doing this work, whose boots on the ground, that we can get behind and say, hey, how can we support you?
Now, how did you get involved, Kentia? You said it was about a year ago, and you had worked with the homeless. How did you find them? How did they find you? And I think that's an interesting.
So I'm a firm believer that God leads you to wherever you're supposed to be. And I loved my previous job. I worked for an agency called Partners Ending Homelessness, and it was an amazing organization. And I just happened to see this job posting on, I believe it was Indeed. And so I applied, and when I did my interview, I was just very open about like what I am, what I can do, what I bring to the table. And the rest is kind of history. And so it's been a great transition for me. A lot of times people say, oh, you're in real estate. And I have to say, no, I'm a social worker. My master's in social work. And our president, Miss Michelle, she always says, I don't know who thought to hire a social worker, but this was the best thing because I know people. One thing, growing up in West Virginia, from a rural community. I'm from an impoverished state. I always tell people the thing I remember as a social worker is I don't ever want to forget what it's like to be on the other side of the table. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times we get so high up, we forget what it was like to be a client. And so I understand the needs of people, not only from my own personal experience, but as far as my profession too. And it really has been a great transition. I love helping people. That's my biggest goal. And that's what I love about our board. Our board is so wonderful. We have 19 members who come from so many different backgrounds, but when we sit and meet, we all meet to do one thing, and that's how can we make a difference in the housing for our North Carolinians. And so I really just feel like it was where I was led to be, and it's just been a great transition. And also working with the homeless. I've said this several times I spoke, but COVID has really impacted housing. We saw people who have never faced homelessness who did. Mothers who were bartenders, mothers who were, working at a restaurant. They lost their job. What happens once you lose your job? You lose the ability to provide for yourself. And so seeing that sector and then being part of the Realtors Association, someone who's not only supposed to sell houses, but who's saying, look, we want to make a difference because we know not everyone can afford to buy a home. What can we do? And that's kind of what Mr. Mark was saying is like, we want to be the person that can help fill that gap, whether it is coming in doing critical home repairs, whether it's coming in building a new home. We want to fill that gap. And so it's just kind of been a kind of good transition for me, if that makes sense.
Well, that's great. And I tell you, I think the perfect person for the position. No
Oh,
doubt.
thank you.
And Mark's over here nodding. He knows it's true.
Well, I was just going to add to this is that, you can feel her passion.
Yes.
We were at our, I think it was our state meetings in Raleigh back in April, and short of getting a standing ovation based on what she was saying, because we had a room full of people. We had our board meeting, and we had a room full of people, and her passion just comes out, and it's infectious. And we have a board who is filled with passion as well, and so that just makes for a great marriage, so to speak, of people, and we do the work. Our board is a working board, and so we, get try to put boots on the ground and get things moving. And it would be amazed at the number of meetings that we're having, week to week, and getting the work done. So, but Kentia is a godsend. So we're grateful to have her.
And I was going to say too, realtors are very involved. I learned so much about working with the realtors. But one thing I love about realtors, they really are very involved in their community. We just did. They do something called Give Back Week. And that's in partnership with National Association of Realtors. And for that whole week, realtors look for community outreach programs that they can do in the community. So we had realtors at associations who cleaned up beaches, who did home repairs, who helped build, ramps and things like that. I like supporting people who I know making a difference, because it's hard out here in this world. It is really hard out here. And so when we can help people and really make a difference, that's what motivates me, I think, the most, is knowing that it's helping someone and knowing it's making a difference.
Right. Well, I was given Kentia's name by Sue Polinsky, and
I love Sue.
Sue is a local gem. She is she can do things and never get credit for it because she doesn't want the credit. And she has her fingers on so many buttons in this community, and so I trusted Sue. And so when I called Kentia, we talked a good long time, and then toward the end she said, "And I'm sight impaired."
Yes.
And I'm like, "Are you kidding? How do you do this?
Right.
How do you do all these things that you?" And then I stopped after we hung up, and I thought, we've got to get her in to tell the story.
Right.
And not just about you guys, but to later tell the story about Kentia's work and how she's been a social worker and now working with to help end homelessness.
I love Sue. Me and Sue are on the City of Greensboro's Human Relations Commission.
Yeah.
And that's how I know Sue. So Sue is amazing, amazing person.
Yes, and we love Sue here because she is going to release our new website in probably within a few weeks, and has worked all year on it for us, or helping us. She's retired from that business, and but she's been helping us because she loves nonprofits. So I do.
Tell us about, if you don't mind, Kentia, tell us about your social work and some of the things you encountered there, and maybe some of the, not leaving out details, obviously, maybe some of the stories that had evolved in your work there.
So I always say I have worked with probably every population but me. I have done mental health and substance abuse therapy and counseling. I worked with youth aging out of foster care. I work with our veterans. I've worked with the homeless. So initially when I started social work, I was wanting to do direct practice. There's two different things, of direct practice and macro. And so I did a lot of direct practice in the beginning, and it was actually my position with Partners Ending Homelessness that I learned that I had a skill with fundraising and really giving a message to people about like what we're doing and how to get involved. And that's kind of how it all kind of started, was just really, like I said, when you go into social work, you don't go in to be rich, okay? And then often I think to myself, why didn't I go into law? No, I'm just playing. But you don't go to be rich. You go to really because you want to make a difference. And so that's kind of how my history with social work has happened. And that's another thing, like I always tell people, I feel like realtors are like social workers. I spoke at the Catawba County Association last week, and I kind of told them, I had said how realtors are similar to social workers. And they said, well, how you say that? I said, well, think about it. When a realtor meets a new client, what do? You get their prehistory, you see what they can afford. As a social worker, we do your biopsychosocial. We want to know your history, what's affected you, what's kind of, been the problems. What do you do second as a realtor? You identify what they looking for, what kind of house they want. As a social worker, you look at what the problems is and what can we do to address it. As you continue as a realtor, you're going through different homes, seeing what's the good fit for them. As a social worker, what are you doing? You are doing different therapies. You're seeing what makes the client get success, what gives them hope. And then as a realtor, what's the last thing you do? You close. They found their home. They found a place where they want to live. As a social worker, we terminate, we discharge. Once a person has met their goals or once they have achieved what you've set out to help them to do, you discharge. And so it was interesting to give that scenario because I don't think sometimes people, especially in positions where people think it's more, financially driven, realize how much they work with people. I can't imagine some of the stories realtors have went through, and you might can say, Mark, helping someone through the house buying process. I am sure they have seen every an emotion. I'm sure you've dealt with clients
Yes.
being, so it's almost in sync to me to work with them because, the home buying process is one of the biggest things you can do next to purchasing a car. And to be someone helping someone through that process, that's got to be within a little stressful too. So I don't know, Mark, do you think that's true that you all kind of do similar social work when it comes to working with people and selling homes?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Throughout that process, we've been we wear a lot of hats.
Yes.
And we're told a lot of times, people come to us, how's this going to impact my taxes? I can give you my opinion is what I tell them, but you want to see your tax account.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how is this legal? I can give you my opinion, but you want to see the lawyer. So we refer them back to the expert in that area, but we wear a bunch of hats. And your analogy of social work is very good analogy because it's very, very similar.
Oh yeah, people probably drive y'all crazy when they buy a house. Call y'all. That's how your clients will do. I use my main cell phone number, and people always say, "Why?" I said, "Well, when I worked with youth, them kids would call me all the time, and so I am just one of these people that I don't care to give people my private cell phone number. If I don't want you calling me, I'll tell you don't call me. So I have always been the type of person to give them my phone number. But yeah, just learning through the process and kind of remembering what I went through the process. And what was so interesting. When I purchased my home in West Virginia in 2007, I'll never forget that the realtor I worked with, she gave me a $100 gift card, left it in my mailbox. And I thought that was so nice because I'm like, man, that is just so nice. And it reminds me of things I used to do with my kids. When I had a kid graduate, I'd buy them a gift, or give them a gift card, So I feel like going through a home buying process with somebody has to be one of the best feelings, especially, even though they probably drove you crazy and you've had to do all this extra work. When they finally get that house and get their keys, I bet there's such a rush for a realtor to know that they was, the part of that happening.
Absolutely. And one of the gratifications that I get is, when you have people come in, I sell, all spectrums of houses, from, first-time buyers all the way up to trophy buyers. My first-time buyers, you get the most gratification out of simply because they come in kind of wide, deer-eyed, like they don't know if they can even purchase or, where to start.
If it's possible.
Right. And when you walk them through the process and then you can go back by the house and see the kids playing in the yard or, and just know that you were a part of that and you made that, help them make that happen. Quick story, okay? One of my first-time home buyers years ago, this was early in my career, going through the process, and North Carolina Housing Finance Agency has to qualify the people to get the down payment assistance. Client was very close on the numbers, and I want to say that if memory serves me correctly, it's like 75 cents that they made over and above the actual amount. Right. And so it was going to be a situation where they weren't going to be able to close. And so that weekend, they, had already got ready to move out of their apartment that they were in and was going to have their stuff loaded on the truck. And, they were distraught. Yeah. And so we're sitting there at about probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon waiting on a decision. And at about 4 o'clock, they came back and said it was approved and they were able to close. And you should have seen the gratification from the individual.
Yeah.
But that's how, you know, it was such a gratification. And since then, that client has bought 3 other houses from me. Their kids have now starting to buy. So it's one of those things where it's a snowball effect. And so
I have to tell you too, in an earlier life, I was an investment broker for 20 some years and used to sell bonds for the North Carolina Housing Finance
Yes.
Agency. And I will tell you, we were always happy when they would come to market with bonds because we knew that that was going to help people buy homes
Right.
that normally wouldn't be able to buy homes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great program. It's still probably the least talked about by politicians, but one of the most successful programs.
NC Housing Finance Agency.
Yes.
Yeah, and we did. Mr. Mark brought up our committees. So our education committee, we recently did our first home buyers seminar. Our director, Philip Rector, he's amazing. He's out of Winston, and so we did our first home buyer seminar because I told Mr. Phil when we were talking to the education committee, a lot of people don't know the process of buying a house or even know what programs is out there. And I said that was for me. Like when I bought my house in 2007, I never heard of down payment assistance or anything like that. And so it was our goal to bring all these resources together. And so when we did our home buyers, we did the first part is in NC Housing Finance programs. We wanted something that's used across the state. And so we presented on the CPLP program, which is a program that can help people purchase their home. And then we wanted to present local resources because a lot of times in these different cities or different counties, they have resources available just for their residents. And so we wanted to give them information of where they could go to in Forsyth County. And so we partnered with Forsyth County Community Development and Financial Pathways. And then we also had a realtor speak because, you know, a lot of people hear the name realtor, but they don't know what that is. And I always tell people realtor is what I call the masters of real estate. They have went above and beyond to get their certification so that they know that they are doing their job effectively. And then we have a financial institution. And so we are wanting to do those across the state because a lot of people want to buy homes, but they don't know where to start. And it can be a very overwhelming process.
Katia, we are right here at the very end of the show, and we are just so happy to have had both of you.
thank you so
And,
much.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yes.
Yeah, it flew. You know.
God.
So we're going to have both of you back at some point.
Well, thank you for letting us, and I'm going to do a shameless plug. Please go to our website, NC Realtors Housing Foundation. We are trying to get sponsors for our 2023 Golf and Gives Golf and Give tournament in Pinehurst. And so please go to our website, and we appreciate you all for letting us come on and just give our message.
Thank you much.
All right, thank you. Thank you for watching our program.